Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Driveline Baseball and Driveline Academy is proud to present to you the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast with your host, Devin Morgan. That's me, Direct Youth Baseball Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy. If you don't like that, I've got two words for you. Good luck. I hope it all goes great for you, but for loyal listeners, for new listeners, for longtime listeners, this is the Driveline Academy podcast, the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. We got a lot of stuff to get into today. Last episode, when we recapped my son's first ever showcase, at 16 years old and almost 17, I threatened that we were going to do the ABCa recap, and we're actually going to get that done today because the PG thing went long, so we're going to get all in the weeds of everything that got accomplished at ABCa. And so we're talking about everything I've been involved with: universal pitch counts, universal reporting, presenting on the MLB arm care panel, and then certainly all of the youth hot stove stuff that I was able to be there for and participate in. But first, before we get into that stuff, we got a quick amount of housekeeping. AxeBat.com, code DL20, as in domineering Lexus 20, will get you 20% off at AxeBat.com. Game bats, training accessories, all the stuff that you might want or need for your stick and ball sport enthusiast in your life. So go over to AxeBat.com, holler at Dane at the boys, and use code DL20, as in domineering Lexus, to get yourself 20% off. And now typically that's where our ad reads stop. However, I have a thing for you, and I don't know why it has taken me so long to do this thing. Perhaps I'm just bad at business. However, I've talked before about how we have youth assessments at Driveline, and not only do we have youth assessments at Driveline right here on the shores of sunny Kent, Washington, but also in Tampa, Florida, and Scottsdale, Arizona. The thing that I have not done is I have not given you guys a podcast exclusive code to be able to come in either by train or plane or car, isn't that how that movie went, and actually bring your youth assessment or your youth player out for a youth assessment at a discounted rate. But that's the thing that we're doing right now. So use the code PODCAST, that is PODCAST, and you can use that when you go to drivelinebaseball.com/training/youth, or if you just throw into the old Google or search machine du jour that you prefer. Shout out to anybody that remembers Ask Jeeves and Alta Vista. Netscape, anybody? Anyways, drivelinebaseball.com/training/youth, or you just go Driveline Baseball Youth Assessments. You will land on a page. It'll talk to you about everything that we do in our youth assessment. There will be a link there that says Schedule Assessment, and if you click on that link and go through that scheduling process before you get to checkout, use code PODCAST, PODCAST, the same letters that you might have typed in when you found this show, and you'll be able to get 25% off, not 25% off of the youth assessments. That's at our Arizona location, our Florida location, and again on the scenic shores of beautiful Kent, Washington, over here where I am. So yeah, you should do that. Code podcast, youth assessments, discounted, and get ready for your spring season. I think that's probably the most critical value point that you could kind of get into this point. It's just kind of like spring season is upon us. You come in for 90 minutes. We're going to go like, hey, man, this is where you are. This is how you compare to your peers. This is how you kind of compare to the peers you're going to be facing over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And here's some stuff to work on. Now, ideally, you work on that stuff for another, call it 6 to 8, maybe 12 weeks, and you come back and reassess and figure out what's changed. Or why don't you just think about like a pre and a post-season assessment, right? How did we start and how did we finish? And you can do all of that stuff for less money by using the code PODCAST at checkout. So drivelinebaseball.com/training/youth, or just, again, light up those Twitter fingers and go to Twitter fingers, your Google fingers. How about that? And go to Driveline Baseball Youth Assessment. You're going to find the page. You're going to click on Schedule Assessment. You're going to use the discount code PODCAST. You're going to spend less money. I got some minor little quick hitters that I want to get into before we get into ABCa, so I'm just going to attack those briefly. I don't know about you guys, but in my neighborhood, I am fortunate enough to see the registration sign-up forms for my local Little League that I coached in and was on the board in for a long period of time. And that's great. It's good to see that stuff out there. Spring is upon us. It means the baseball season is coming closer. It means that we are on the cusp of more kids hopefully getting a chance to figure out how much fun that they can have playing baseball and the things that they can learn about themselves. I will say, however, one thing that I don't want to say triggered because I don't want to throw my lot in with people that talk about being triggered. However, there was a sign that I saw next to some of our local Little League sign-up forms that enraged me. and it was a sign up for lacrosse, which is whatever. Look, man, kids, we've talked about this often, kids have more options than perhaps ever in terms of other sports that they can play, other games that they can consume, either electronic or in real life, whatever. So I see this sign up for lacrosse, and lacrosse is one of these options that kids might be able to get compelled to. And underneath it, it said lacrosse, America's oldest sport. And I don't know what the Venn diagram is of people that listen to this incredibly niche podcast and also might have a toe or two dipped in the pool of lacrosse, but you need to talk to your people. Because I know exactly what you're trying to do when you're trying to substantiate that lacrosse is America's oldest sport because people played it circa 1100. Which apparently, when the Iroquois people in the New York in the Canadian area of around that border were playing something that basically predates lacrosse in 1100. That wasn't. Those aren't even people. Those people lived outside. They're not like us, right? They had to make fire with sticks. They had to find water from holes in the ground. But when you tell me that lacrosse is America's oldest sport, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to substantiate the idea that having your child choose lacrosse is perhaps not as contradictory as it is to have them choose baseball, because you're suggesting that lacrosse has been embedded in the fabric of this country since the year 1100. And sure, but also come on with that. Come on with that. If you want to have people go play lacrosse because of the benefits of lacrosse and the things you believe in, talk about your game. Don't do this little underhanded thing where you're trying to slide under the gate and be oh no, you should play lacrosse because it's just the same as baseball. We've been around for as long. You are propping up an idea that simply does not exist. Baseball is embedded in the fabric of this country, and it continues to be because we are fortunate that people want to continue to sign up. In last episode, or maybe the episode before that, we talked about the Jordans on the shelf concept, right? These type of choices by consumers about what they want their kids to participate in are not necessarily carved in stone. However, this America's oldest sport thing, as you're trying to attack the game that I love and the game that I'm very passionate about, talk about your own game. How about that? We'll treat this like dugouts in regular baseball, right? You talk about your guys. I'll talk about my guys. Don't start this cross chatter. America's oldest game. Miss me with that. What else? We'll wrap up with a little bit of a dissertation. Not a dissertation, a conversation about multi-sport play. And another thing, let's go ahead and get into the ABCa recap. So ABCa, big deal this year, just because I had the opportunity to it actually set up a lot of the work, that we have been pushing for since last year. So the big thing for any new listeners or people that are joining us, I'm fortunate enough to participate in the ABCa Youth and Travel Baseball Committees with Rob Haney of Northern Virginia Travel Baseball League, Jordan Baltimore, New York Empire Baseball, Taylor McCullough, who's a VP over at Perfect Game, and a bunch of other people that actually participate in these committees and the working groups that come off of them. Jeff Sofa, David Klein, Paul. I mean, it's just my guy Jimmy Phil and Jerry, more guys than I can count, and if I didn't throw the name out there, I'm just saying, man, we got a real squad over there, and it's a real privilege to be able to participate with those guys. So one of the things that we've been doing is the annual ABCa Youth Baseball Summit, which again is now an annual thing. This last year we were in Austin. Prior to that, we were basically on the course where the Masters is played. Not a bad location to try to get some work done. Not a great location if you're a crappy golfer, which is why I did not decide to create just infinite, holes in the green there. Anyways, I digress. So last ABCa Youth Baseball Summer, so we're talking about November of 2024. We decided that one, with Rob Haney's leadership again, because a lot of this is just it's all credit to his work and his kind of opening up the door for this thing, and specifically to get ABCa involved. my big thing coming in that was just like I was just tired of what I had been seeing when it comes to the overuse thing, and decided that like I was going to push forward an idea, which is a system for universal pitch counts based on actual player workload and not just kind of like arbitrarily throwing a number at the wall, but pairing that with a system for universal recording, which basically means right hand, left hand talk to each other, cross organizational compliance. Kid pitches in a Little League game on Thursday, their availability in a tournament setting that weekend for a provider that is running the system would be inclusive of what that kid's already done, right? It all just kind of flows into an application, API push pull. You end up with like a red light, green light for kids and their pitching availability across different organizations. And I mean, not for nothing because it's my idea, but I'm pretty convicted that this is a thing that we need to get off the ground because of the nature of youth baseball year of our Lord 2026, which is you've got a ton of kids that are doing both. They're going to play rec ball, and ideally they're playing rec ball in an environment where they run some type of pitch count standard. So that's Ripken, no, that's Pony, that's Little League. It's those type of folks, right? And that's all well and good, but if that kid is then also doing tournament stuff on the weekends, or they're playing for an additional team on top of that, which is a thing, you just get these compounding effects of not knowing what's happening in one environment to be able to determine pitching availability and potential for overuse in another environment. Right hand, left hand, right? So that was my big thing, ABCa Youth Baseball Summit 2024. Fortunately enough, he was able to get a decent amount of traction, specifically some of the tournament providers and the representative leagues who are participating there, and had really good conversations around that. Then we got a chance to go present that idea to MLB directly in March. And again, man, I sometimes I just feel like the most fortunate guy in the world because I don't know what I did to get lucky enough to be able to be connected to people that can kind of like help me push this type of stuff forward. I don't know how often it is that somebody like gets an opportunity to like get a meeting and then, you know, walk into Roger Goodell's office and be like, hey, this is how you guys need to take some amount of authority and stewardship over the youth product that effectively works as a funnel to get kids eventually to your level of game. I don't know how frequently that happens. But I was fortunate enough to be able to be in that position. So me, Rob Haney, again, Northern Virginia Travel Baseball League, and Taylor McCullough, the VP at Perfect Game, you know, they set me up to be able to present that thing directly to MLB and with USA Baseball in attendance, because that's part of the ecosystem too. And Morgan Sword was there. You know, I mean, it wasn't just like a lot of lower level. I don't want to say lower level, but some fairly important people there. Again, tremendously fortunate to have guys like John D'Angelo in the MLB office and Bill Francis and Kevin Ma, who listen to us when we talk about this stuff. And, you know, I was, again, sometimes I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I got a chance to talk to John when MLB did their pitching injury report that came out in December of 2024 that kind of like peeled back some layers on the onion and talked about, you know, when you start to see at the Andrews Institute, the percentage of surgeries that they're doing. So this is Dr. James Andrews, American Sports Medicine. They have a surgical center where they do surgeries on ball players that need arm problem, that needs, you know, some type of arm issue they need to fix, I guess is the best word for it. And when you see the percentage of those surgeries being attributed to a youth and amateur population rising above 50%, I think peaking at 60%, we got a problem. And I think, you know, that to me was the big thing that really showed how prevalent this issue of overuse in youth baseball was, because that shouldn't be a thing. That just shouldn't be a thing. There really isn't much to gain in terms of actual value to have kids be overused to that degree. But when the percentage starts to move kind of that high, I think it tells you something about the ecosystem. So got a chance to present that to MLB in March, had some really positive conversations coming out of that. It was well received. Everything's good. So then we move into Youth Summit of 2025, which then leads up to ABCa 2026. And at the Youth Summit in Austin, again, got some more positive signal from, again, some of the event providers and league providers that we are trying to bring into what effectively I'm calling is like a coalition of the willing. The reality is that, like, the landscape of youth baseball in this country is not that you can kind of just like install this thing on the top down and then force everybody underneath to follow it. Our system is much more American than that, meaning that whether you're Little League International or Pony or Ripken or Babe Ruth or PG or USSSA or PBR/bullpen or anybody else that I'm forgetting that's like a big player in this ecosystem, you by and large, you kind of just get to decide what you want to do about this stuff. And because of that, it puts us in this position where if we want to advance something like this, which ideally is a league-wide initiative, and maybe not even league-wide, it's an ecosystem-wide initiative where it goes across organizations, you need to find a way to have these organizations receive this idea and see the positive leverage that it grants them, right? To see the clarity that it grants them, see the clarity it gets to their coaches. There's all sorts of other good stuff that comes out of this before you even get into a conversation about compelling parents to choose an environment for their kids' play that is more likely to keep them safe or not. I mean, that's a pretty easy thing to market. Anyway, so we got some positive action going out of that in the youth summit that really just set up a lot of the work that was going to happen at ABCa. Again, to kind of lay out the landscape of what I had at ABCa, what we were lining up is a bunch of meetings with, again, like the big wigs in the equation, and that's MLB, and that's Little League, and that's, I mean, it's everything, everybody that'll kind of come to the table to talk about, like, hey, remember that idea that like the crazy bald bearded guy talked about in Augusta, Georgia back in 2024? We've got some positive signal that like maybe this is the thing that there's an appetite to push forward. So, again, just trying to build this coalition of the willing. And with that, there are a couple things going on. For me, and I guess I'll just bring you guys along for the ride. If this is compelling, you tell me, and if it's not, then you can tell me too. So what I had lined up was introing the MLB Arm Care panel, where they brought in some big name pitching coaches at the collegiate level. So a team doc from the Oakland A's, like they brought in some big name guys. So I was kind of constrained to about, they said 60 seconds. Truth be told, I might have stretched it a little bit closer to 90 to 120. But really, with an audience of a lot of people, because again, you're talking about ABCa, the national convention is like 7,000 people there. And because so much of the growth at ABCa's level has been at the youth and the amateur side, so youth and amateur and travel baseball, there are more of those coaches, more of those men and women who are coming to ABCa who want to know what's going on. And when it's an MLB Arm Care panel, man, like there's a lot of people. So I knew that I had my, call it between 60 and 120 seconds, before I get the old Showtime at the Apollo, I get like yanked off the stage to kind of set the stage about like, hey man, this is where we're trying to go. And you're going to have this other conversation about some of the specifics of what's going on the arm care side as these people on the panel understand them. But this is my 60 to 120 seconds for me to tell you as a member of ABCa, just like you, who happens to be on a committee, and I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by all these guys and girls who want to push this thing forward. This is where we're trying to go. So I had that, I don't know, very, very important, less than 2 minutes. Then the ABCa, the Youth Hot Stove, which is the thing that, largely I credit to Jordan Baltimore, New York Empire Baseball, and I'm just fortunate enough to be able to be along for the ride for what we're going on over there to get some information that's, I think, a little bit different than what goes on the youth stage, right? On the youth stage, I think a lot of what's put forward is very, like, coaching specific, right? There's some desire to bring value, right? Hey, you flew all the way out to Columbus. Let's make sure you leave here with a better understanding of some of the stuff that you can do and how you can coach based on the insight and experience of the men and women were able to be up on that stage. And again, I was fortunate enough to be up on that stage. I know what a privilege it is to be up there. What we've tried to do with the Youth Hot Stove is aim it a little bit more specifically to Some things are a little bit more broad about the direction of the game. So, we're talking about things like, what is the future of youth baseball, and how do you have productive conversations about what we know is happening with private equity money entering the space. The panel that I was on in particular was called Passion Before Profits, how to make decisions to scale your passion to success. Big passion guy. I don't know that I'm doing the best job of the scaling thing, but I'm trying. And then the other one was player to coach, transitioning from professional play into professional coaching and business building. So that's what we had on the youth hot stove. And then we had some other, again, just a variety of different things. So on Wednesday, I get in there as early as I can with the flights that I had, and then end up, it's a long day of travel for your boy. But, it takes what it takes. So who cares, right? So Wednesday, some pretty quick pre-meetings before the meeting, just kind of talk about what the agenda is going to be and what we're going to get done for the rest of the conference. On Thursday, I had a meeting with the folks over at PitchSafe, and I would just say that, like, if you're somebody who has a player and you're trying to do a better job of, like, getting some granular information about how they're dealing with the workload that they're presented with, I think PitchSafe is something that I absolutely would advocate that you go check out. We're having some conversations about maybe there's a way that we can plug some Driveline Pulse stuff into what they're already doing. I really want to, again, once I'm done with recording this podcast, I need to send some Slack messages, try to push that forward. That they just launched, I think at ABCa, they had launched 6 or some odd weeks ago, and still had, and already had a ton of users, both individuals and teams, who are picking up what they're putting down, and that's really cool. Matt and Tyler and the guys over at PitchSafe, man, I think they got something going there. And then certainly, if we get a chance to make this thing work a little bit better with some real workload data from Pulse, you're going to hear me screaming about that a lot. After that, we had just some committee meetings. Got a chance to, again, to kind of like talk about, hey, we went from kind of like a maybe a little bit less defined idea of what this system of universal pitch counts, universal pitch counts, universal reporting looks like. Now we know a little bit more clearly what it's going to look like. So, hey, Little League, like this is what we got going on. Talked to some of the other folks that are a little bit on the PE side that have bought up some big businesses, because again now they're in charge of some of these leagues. So it's like, hey, I think the one thing that you would expect that the private equity would bring to the equation of youth baseball would be management, right? That's something that I think, as again, maybe a bad businessman, but like someone who has been on the entrepreneurial side and also working at Driveline for the last 8 years, I think it's fair to say that there's a certain subject of businesses in youth baseball that are not being run particularly well. And I would even go so far as to say that, like, the fact that we don't have any type of management for this workload issue is inherently, it's a structure and a management issue that PE, I think, could bring us some leverage to. So, talk to those guys a little bit. And then, again, we're just pushing forward. So basically the big thing is just like, lining up the Friday stuff. So the Friday stuff was, we did a little bit of like a leaders lunch. So the idea was, and again, this is something I was fortunate to participate in with Jordan over New York Empire and Rise. Brought in some actual people that are running facilities specifically, to just have some working groups to talk about what we got going on, and certainly I ended up over on the arm care working group and pushed that thing forward. Some private meetings again with other large youth baseball leagues. I'm trying to hedge a little bit, if you understand what I'm saying. And it was a good conversation, and certainly I think ended the way that we would want it to, which is just like, hey, if there's a more perfect mousetrap for this thing, like, please let us know. And again, that's a system that I'm trying to push forward, is a more perfect mousetrap for tracking workload and keeping kids safe in youth baseball. It's interesting when you have to navigate this space where you've got, men and women who are running really large organizations that touch a lot of kids, we've already gone through PitchMart 1.0. And the reality is that, like, when PitchMart 1.0 came out, there was a certain subsection of leagues who chose not to adopt the standard, or chose to adopt a standard that's kind of, again, this is a structure that was allowed, but is, hey, well, there's a level of PitchMart compliance where you can tell coaches that they should be aware of PitchMart standards, but you don't require them to constrain their behavior inside the boundaries of PitchMart. That's a thing. And, I will confess that I found myself thinking about this thing a little bit more politically, because you got to navigate some of these, these bruises and hurt feelings about kind of what's happened in the past. It's just part of it, and that's okay, because while it is a challenge to kind of navigate some stuff or some feelings that might have occurred from, like, something that is a decade in the rear view, whereas, hey, this organization said they were going to pick up PitchMart and then they didn't, it kind of made us feel like we were holding the bag. Like, I understand, those feelings totally. I think the thing, however, that matters most, truly, is that we understand that there is much more leverage to be gained by attacking the current deficiencies of the entire ecosystem and acknowledging that we could all benefit from some updating to the PitchMart standard. I think that's just a thing. And it just so happens that's something that I'm, I guess, one of the big cheerleaders for, and I don't work at MLB and I don't work at USA Baseball, but again, I'm going to continue to stump for my guys, man. Being able to get a chance to work with Taylor McCullough at Perfect Game and Rob Haney in Northern Virginia Travel Baseball, who again also is like the ABCa fourth executive VP. So he's on his path to being the ABCa president at some point. Being able to have those guys help me push forward this stuff and get in the right rooms and have the right conversations, man, it's a pretty significant blessing. There was some stuff that came out of those meetings that I think I can get a little bit more specific on. MLB is considering how to kind of attack this problem, and they've got on the slides that they presented, update PitchMart guidelines, right? Close loopholes to reflect new research, address practical topics facing amateur players, parents, and coaches, and develop simpler recommendations that can be communicated more broadly. Boy, do I have a thing for you. And I'm joking, right? I mean, these are obviously conversations that, I've had extensively with John D'Angelo and the other folks at MLB. So I think that there's a great degree of parallel energy that is pushing towards, us trying to get this whole thing together. So that's a good thing. They also shared some new research. I think they were able to pull this from insurance records. So they have a slide that says players are getting Tommy John surgery at younger ages, many of whom have little chance of reaching pro baseball. Like, yeah, 100%. And of all the kids that got TJ in insurance claims from the years 2010 to 2022, let me just read you the statistics. 13-year-olds, 1%. 14-year-olds, 2%. 15-year-olds, 6%. 16-year-olds, 11%. 17-year-olds, 14%. So in total, you got 25, 31, 33, 34. So 34% of all TJ surgeries over this course of this 12-month window are attributed to kids 17 and younger. That's not good at all. But, again, I've probably beat this well into dead horse territory, so I will just continue to pound the drum that, this is an amateur baseball problem that is going to affect the future of our game, and we need to continue to treat it with the appropriate level of seriousness. Now, the one thing that I will say, and probably the most fun that I had at ABCa was... thanks to Dane and the boys over at AxeBat, they hit me up and are like, hey, we're going to do a demo in the HitTrax cage. Do you want to come down and just and coach some kids? And I was like, done deal. You tell me when and where. I will be there. So I got a chance to have like, I don't know, it's probably like 45 minutes, maybe a little bit less than an hour in total. And it was just fun. It was just fun, man. Sometimes I think I under-index for talking about how much fun it is to coach kids. It's awesome. It's great. I don't know, I don't have any type of like comparative experience where I'm going to contrast my experience in coaching like 8, 13, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds versus coaching college athletes, right? I understand that, tomato, potato, these two things are not the same. But the other thing I understand for me directly is like the thing that like that gets me fired up is just working with kids, man. It was so much fun to coach those kids in the HitTrax cage. A shout out to Mike Diefdrad, Cheska, HitTrax Andrew, the rest of the guys and girls over there at HitTrax. It's not unfair to say that like HitTrax changed my life. That just straight up, I think if I had that same experience that I had when I walked the first day into Driveline in late January of 2018, and I saw Herbie Good hitting a ball 111 miles an hour at like 500 plus feet. If that just happened in a cage with no data, and you couldn't see the outcome, and they were like, boy, that ball was hit really hard, but I wouldn't have any idea how hard. HitTrax changed my life. Definitely changed my son's life. So I debt of gratitude to all those guys, man. So being able to get a chance to do that stuff in the HitTrax cage was really, really, really fun. And again, specifically with the Axe, because man, those guys have helped me with stuff, right? I wanted to develop, patent, and sell a single bat youth overload speed training solution to make things a little bit more simple. Axe is our partner over there. Same with the youth underload smash bat, and again, have that be light enough to be really engaged in super maximal bat speed training, but robust enough with a skinny barrel to be able to hit regular baseballs. Axe are able to help us kind of do all those things. So it was just an absolute joy to be able there to coach in that cage. And the thing that I can say is that it was a thing where Strategy Red was recording, so we should get footage off of that. That should be really, really cool to check out. And that was my Friday, which then brings us to Saturday, where the rubber meets the proverbial road. And the big thing for me on Saturday was, number one, actually filming some stuff for MLB that allegedly is going to air on the MLB Network at some point, to kind of talk about they had a bunch of questions about youth baseball. Again, just super fortunate and thankful to guys like John D'Angelo that would give me opportunity to just sit down and talk, and hopefully they, that video, that segment comes out good, and they push it out there, and hopefully that works. And then it was the MLB, the arm care panel. And I mean, you guys know me. If I'm going to get an opportunity like that for something of that level of importance, and I'm really constrained about the amount of time that I have to do it, I just go absolute like full anxiety mode. So I spent about an hour AirPods in, running my 90-ish second talking points over and over and over and over and over while pacing in a hallway, a little bit away from everybody else in the convention. So I had a little bit of peace and quiet, so I could just go full crazy person and talk to myself while pacing in a hallway, because that's just a normal thing that people do. But when we got a chance to get up there and I got my little moment to talk about everything we got going on, it went well. Had to make sure to confirm with Kevin and Bill at MLB that anything I was putting forward in terms of the direction of where we want to take it with universal pitch counts and universal reporting app, that they were okay with saying that stuff, and I wasn't kind of talking out of turn. But we were good. So I nailed my 90 to 120 seconds, and then got out of the way. And then we had the youth hot stove, which again was it was a really cool conversation to be able to be a part of. I think Jordan's idea of having this stuff be a little bit more focused on some of the business stuff, because the ABCa youth baseball stage is a lot more focused on the coaching stuff, makes a ton of sense. So Jordan hosted the panel. Cameron from Propel Hitting was a dog. Chris Estep, who's from Round Tripper Sports Academy. Duke Baxter, he and Steve Nicorak are doing Zone Sports and Dominate the Diamond. Those are my guys. It was just a great, man, it was a great fun time to be able to talk up on stage with those guys for 20, 25 minutes. It was cool. I got some video from that I should probably, I guess, put up on socials before everybody forgets about ABCa. But all told, I think it was a great experience, and I think mostly just, man, I've talked to some guys in the aftermath of ABCa who are like, okay, cool, we understand universal reporting. Like, let's go. Can we do this now? And it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time, man. I think I don't really even want to talk specifically about timelines because I'm not sure that they're fully committed to yet. But all I can tell you is just like, number one, we got real good positive energy coming out of this thing. But also number two, it's true that like trying to land this thing almost feels like trying to like turn around a cruise ship in a pond. And that's just the nature of it. It ends up being perhaps a little bit political, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It just means you have to manage a bunch of different people's perception, understanding, interest, buy-in, etc. And I'm learning from Rob Haney and Taylor McCullough, and I am learning from Jordan Baltimore, and I'm trying to do everything I can to take the things that I learned and use that to help me be more effective at compelling people to understand that like this is a thing that provides us definitive value and leverage in the system, in the entire ecosystem, and it's going to benefit everybody. So that's the thing. So that's ABCa. It was a really good time, man. I hope that does enough of a good enough job to kind of explain that like there's layers to this stuff that we're trying to navigate. There's a bunch of different players involved, and you need this coalition of the willing because you can't just install it top down. So inherently we have to get a little bit political, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think ideally we use this time to build and expand this coalition of the willing to the point that when we get a little bit more firm about what we're going to roll out, they feel like this isn't a thing that just gets dropped on their heads. It's a thing that instead that they've kind of seen its gestation, if that makes sense. So that's what we got going on with ABCa. Couple other things that I just want to touch on before we wrap. Call it like 10 more minutes. We'll go. I had a really good question from somebody who kind of wanted to dig deeper on multi-sport play and younger athletes, and kind of how both we deal with that stuff within the academy with our teams, and also kind of how I dealt with my own kids. So I'll just kind of go through some of the stuff that I said in answer to somebody that was in our Slack asking about this question about multisport, and then we'll expand me a little bit. So the parent that I was talking to has a 14-year-old who really wants to play college baseball, and they're playing multiple sports right now, but they kind of understand that things are getting a little bit more real, and start to look at the window and see that window is not infinite, and you start asking these questions about like, well, where's the highest leverage way that I can spend my time? So here's what I said. The push for multi-sports play is largely because of two things. It provides a national enforced break from throwing and exposure to a variety of athletic problems that kids otherwise might not get exposed to if they only play baseball. I think a lot of the conversation about multi-sports play where it's like, well, Aaron Judge was lettered in 4 sports in high school. Like, okay, great. How is that relevant to my slightly behind the curve 13 or 14-year-old child who is not built like Aaron Judge, right? So again, to continue on what I said, because so much of what separates the kids who get a chance to explore college baseball opportunities versus the ones for whom the door is shut often comes to the effects of superior athleticism. And that's the tricky thing, right? I think you can say pretty concretely that if a kid only gets exposed to baseball-specific problems and the solving of those baseball-specific problems in terms of the athletic stimulus that they get, that they're just not going to be that well-rounded of an athlete because baseball isn't going to force you to solve those type of problems the way that it's typically done when we over-index for the skill. So let me try to make a little bit more plain English, right? When you're talking about kids, whether they're 10, 14, or 16, their bodies are still developing, but they're also still like relatively green to the skills of baseball compared to older athletes, right? They just have less time to develop, less time to practice, less time to have their stuff challenged in games. So it makes sense in terms of like setting up a hierarchy of training where coaches sometimes go like, all right, well, we just have to focus on this skill stuff because the skill stuff is where we're the most green. And I understand that, but there's another issue, which is that they're also green in terms of like overall athletic development. But the signal from that is a little bit harder to see. If a kid is bad at hitting, I can see that in probably a 90-second assessment in a cage, right? If a kid's throwing mechanics are bad, and they're probably bad because they can't be strong and stabilize and move kinetically from one position to the other, that's something I can see really quickly. It's a little bit less apparent when you're looking at a kid that is like less athletically developed to understand that a lot of that athletic development is in some ways linked to some of their deficiencies on the skill side. It seems a lot more easier and a little bit more of a direct path to just like attack the skill development. But you got to understand that these things are all rooted in the same tree, and the roots of that tree have to be sturdy and robust in terms of like overall athletic capacity. So to run that all the way back to this conversation about multi-sport play, yeah, I understand what you're saying in that having a kid not only play baseball, but also play basketball, but also play soccer, and maybe play football, and maybe play tennis, and maybe swim. Well, now if you have a child that's exposed to all of those things, you're looking at a robust set of athletic problems that they need to solve, which is going to inform their overall athletic development. That's a good thing. But again, they're also green on the baseball-specific stuff. So the $64,000 question, as my uncle used to say, is how do you balance all of these things? And I think a lot of times when you see kids who choose to just focus on one sport, that decision gets criminalized because there's a presumption that when they're focusing on that one sport, they're not also going to pair that with a focus on age-appropriate, broad athletic development. Well, that's what we do here, right? That's what we do here. Every practice that we run for our teams is going to have some amount of time, whether it's either our LTAD, long-term athletic development curriculum, or just like if they're old enough and they're ready for it, conventional baseball player-specific strength training, which is not just things that color the way that you throw the ball and swing the bat. You're trying to provide a broad base of stimulus to drive movement, performance, and output generally, and then have that stuff apply itself in a baseball-specific sense. So what did we do, right? My son was a multi-sport athlete up until the point that he was 12. When he turned 13, he was like, hey, I just want to play baseball. I don't want to do this other stuff. Okay. All right. What that means is that now it is my responsibility as his parent or coach or some combination of both of those things to ensure that if we're going to focus on baseball, that focusing on baseball doesn't mean focus on baseball ignorant about athletic development. These things have to be linked. You have to make decisions primarily about the schedule and about the time allocation, about how you're going to develop all of it, because that's your responsibility. Your responsibility is not just to over-index for the baseball-specific stuff and hope that they get bigger and stronger. If that's the way that you pursue this thing, then yes, your single-sport athlete is going to have a worse overall athletic future than the kid that plays multi-sport. Because they're just not a good enough athlete. And if you don't understand that there are literally decisions being made at the high school and the collegiate level where you compare athletes of very similar skill, but much different athletic preparation and presentation, the more athletic kid is going to get the opportunity. That's just the truth. That's just the truth. And maybe you don't like that truth, but it doesn't change the fact that like college coaches are looking at athletes with a risk assessment. Two kids of the same athletic of the same athletic composition, differing levels of skill, hey, sure, the kid with the higher skill is going to get the roster spot. Similar skill, different athletic presentation, you're taking the more athletic kid 11 times out of 10. So the job, when you're the parent or you're the coach of a kid who decides to convert to single sport, is to make sure that they get enough dosing of general athletic preparation and the value there to make sure that that stuff is going to inform everything else you're trying to work on the skill development side, baseball specific. You have to address both sides of the equation. If you don't, you're set up for all the failures that can come to you when you just focus on playing one sport and one sport only. All right, so if we've covered the youth sport thing and beaten that to death, as we like to do on this show, I really don't have much less. Other than a couple weeks ago, we had a scrimmage on field, and I think I've mentioned before, I've been coaching our 18Us for a bit. I do have a new head coach hired and installed, so these kids are going to get a better coach than me. But I have been able to kind of coach these kids throughout our off season, and that has meant that it's once more through the breach of me being able to coach my son. And it occurred to me that this very well might be the last time. This scrimmage we had a couple weeks ago. I won't be coaching him, on field in the summertime. We've got some junior summer baseball stuff that we have to figure out, whether that means hopping on to a team that's going to go play in one of these bigger events is a thing that might be happening. But if that happens, then I'm definitely not coaching him. If he just stays on the academy team for the duration of the entire summer, again, I won't be coaching him. I'm not going to coach him in high school baseball. Because as of now, I'm not a high school baseball coach, although I did tell my wife a couple weeks ago that, man, we get these kids out of the house. When we get them all the way out of the house, and I'm, maybe at that stage of life where I'm actually looking for things to do, the odds that you find me coaching a high school baseball team program somewhere, man, that I would love to be able to have the privilege of doing that. That's something I might explore a little bit later on down the line when this beard gets a little bit less patchy gray and is more like gray. So anyways, a couple weeks ago, I'm on field and I'm coaching these kids and coaching third because I like to coach third. I just like to be able to be on that side of things. I know different guys like to be on first or third or whatever, and I'm generally like a third base guy. Although I've done both, and my son is, we're playing in an organization where there's a lot of kids that both of us know, whether they're kids that he plays with in high school or kids that he plays against in high school in our conference. A lot of them have been kids that I've known since they were, I don't know, call it 8, 9, maybe a little bit younger than that. It was a good time. We had a good scrimmage, good environment, good culture between both organizations. So Danny's in an AB against a kid that he's been playing baseball with and against for a lot of years. And that kid, Oliver Verdoes, is a good baseball player. He just committed to college. He's upper eights off the bump. I don't know, man. It's been really cool to see him grow up. Great family too. And they work into it's a really good AB. And I think it was he pitched 6 or pitched 7. So, whatever number of pitches it is that gets me like the maximum level of anxiety, that's how long that AB was. And 3-2 count, Danny managed to turn around a heater, I believe, and found a little left center gap over a center fielder's head. And, he's burning up the line. He's coming into 2, and I'm just, I'm shouting him like, come see me, 3-3-3, right? Like all the things that you say to a runner where you're trying to let him know that to come find you. And he makes the turn, and I'm, to me, and man, I don't know, like if that was the last time, and it very well could be.
the privilege of being able to spend this amount of time with my kids in sport, and specifically with my son. The privilege of that is never going to be lost on me. I said earlier, man, sometimes I just feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Like I got the best wife and partner that I could ever ask for. I got 2 kids who are beautiful and wonderful and unique and driven. And I got a job that allows me to come in here and do this and talk to you guys. And like it's not a thing that I do on the side. This is integrated into my job, and I do feel I feel very fortunate to be able to do that stuff. But I don't know, man. Bringing Danny around to 3 on that triple in that scrimmage. I don't know, man. I don't know that as a father, there's much better than what I'm trying to communicate in that moment. Like to me. He's burning up the line, and he has, I don't know, is it a quarter second? Is it a tenth of a second to peek over at me while he's running as fast as he possibly can, trying to pick up a free 90 if it's there. There's something significant and validating about that interaction. And I don't know if, base coaches in the pros feel this way. I don't know if base coaches in college feel this way, but I can tell you as a father who's coaching his own son to come into a bag, the emotional impact of that is substantial. And, it brings me back to... I'll tell you what it brings me back to. When D was, I think when he was 9, he was playing minors ball in little leagues because Cora was coming back to baseball after a year and a half or maybe 2 years in fast pitch that she didn't necessarily always enjoy. She was unsure about coming back to baseball, and I was like, hey, look, just come back and play baseball for me on the baseball side, and we'll just have fun. Like we're just going to have a lot of fun. And she was brave enough to kind of like put some of the past experiences she had on the shelf and like come back and do that thing. And in so much as it matters, Danny was ready for a little bit of a more challenge at 9, so we slid him up into minors with the idea that he'd be in minors for that 1 year at 9, and then he'd be playing majors as a 10-year-old, and ideally get like three years worth of experience in little league majors, because it was appropriate. This wasn't just like a thing arbitrarily we decided to do. It was appropriate. So we had quite a year. Regular season, I executed the game plan exactly as I draw it up for you guys, meaning we ran like a developmental phase of the season and a competition phase of the season. The developmental phase of the season did not go particularly well in terms of win-loss record, but we learned a lot. Started to move into the competition phase of the year when it was appropriate, even close to like the end of season championships is what we did in our league, where thankfully for our league, the win-loss record in the regular season didn't affect your seeding into that end of the season tournament playoff structure. And encouraged me and enabled me as a coach to be as aggressive with like learning as I wanted to during the regular season, because the thing that actually mattered was setting the team up for maximal competitiveness when it actually mattered. So we're into the end of season club championships. First game we lost in the playoffs. Danny got run over by a base runner at second base. I'll tell this story in full another time. Anyways, we end up in the championship. I think it was a championship. Or it might have been the play-in game to the final. coaching against a good guy, a guy that I know on the other side, good group of Little League kids. And Danny works again like this, I don't know, 7, 8, maybe 9 pitch AB. One of the one of the balls in that AB, he hit so far foul, he hit it over, like entirely over the dugout on the third base side. I'm not even sure how exactly he managed that. He pulled it that far foul. Anyways, does the thing, left center gap again, and it's like a little 9-year-old just like watching him like motor around the bases and come into 3. And it was a close play. It's Little League, right? But it was a close play at third, but he slid in. And again, I am that guy, and it happened to be like as I'm coaching, I'm like holding my phone trying to get video of this whole thing happening, because I don't know, whatever. I've already given my dissertation and my excuse for why I videotape so many of my kids' games, and I'll dust that off at another point, because it's something I need for the way that my brain works, and I don't know if my brain is always going to work the way that I need it to work. So right now, that's just what I do. And if you feel some type of way about that, about me being a youth baseball coach that's getting video while I'm on the field, then like, whatever. Find me, we can have a conversation about it. And I've had people have a conversation with me about it before, and it is what it is, man. Anyways, because I have video of it, I remember that look on his face as a 9-year-old, like motoring into the bag, and the drive and like the passion that was on his face as a kid that age. And like, and certainly we can talk about all the reasons for that, right? There's certainly a lot of Jean Piaget, cognitive development, concrete operational phase, formal operational phase, that defines why these kids approach competitiveness with like a very stark understanding of like, we have to win because losing is dangerous. Like we talked about this ad nauseum, and I probably still will be, but I don't know, man. Him cruising into that bag at 9, same kid cruising into the bag at 4 days before his 17th birthday, when this most recent coaching opportunity for me happened. And I've told my kids this, man. All I want them to do is I want them to find something that they're passionate about, and then try to follow that passion. And ideally, you find a way to make that passion your job. And if you can't, then you get a job that suits you, and you pursue your passion with the time that you have. Again, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet, because other than my wonderful wife and my kids and a small group of friends, like, this is the only thing I care about. Well, that and wrestling, absent the, shout out to Eddie Guerrero in the shirt. This is all I got. And to see my kid so passionately play this game, it's been such a wonderful experience. And the message that I kind of took out of that is one that I actually reiterated just this last weekend at the Northwest Baseball Coaches Association conference down in Portland. Talking to youth coaches, which is just like, you need to understand that like the next time might be the last time. You don't know how long these kids are going to play the game. You don't know when they're going to have an experience that might change their perspective on whether they want to play the game. And I think as a youth baseball coach or a parent, part of your job is to do everything you can to make sure that like the next time is not the last time, but also acknowledge that like some amount of that stuff you can't necessarily control the decision, but what you want to be able to control is some of the things that influence the decision. Is this a fun experience for me? Is this a validating experience for me? Is this a challenging experience for me? Is this an experience that made me feel better or worse about myself? Is it an experience that's helping me color and shape the way that I relate to the world, my own development, personal development, etc.? I think you need to understand that like the next time might be the last time as a youth baseball coach, because if you do, then you can harness all those opportunities. And the perspective that grants you should color the way that you coach. It should color the way that you treat people. It should color the way that you treat athletes. It should color the way that you run your team. It should color the way that you cultivate culture. Because the next time could be the last time. And in this particular Sunday, coaching this particular scrimmage for me, I know it might be the last time that I coached him. It's not going to be the last time that he plays the game. But because it might be the last time that I coached him, for myself, I need to weigh and value the experience that way internally. And then externally, I try to burn some calories to just send that signal, man. It's a joy to watch you play. And like my wife, quite frankly, is probably better about that stuff than I am sometimes. Sometimes my coaching instincts get in the way, and I don't typically like start that conversation, but when that conversation starts, because I give him space to start it, we'll deep dive on that stuff, because baseball guy. So we'll get deep down the rabbit hole, and my wife is she's just so emotionally intelligent that she'll just cut to the heart of it and just go, I love watching you play. And like, hey man, I look at the video that in this instance my wife was able to get, so I didn't have to be that guy on an 18U field videoing your kid. I think it feels a little bit different at 18 than it does at 9, right? And that's fair. So my wife gets the video, but listening back to it, and just that interaction, right? Just that exchange of, I'm trying to tell him it's okay. I'm telling him it's okay to go. I'm telling him it's okay to be aggressive. I'm telling him that it is okay to push. The window of time that I have as a parent to have these type of experiences where I can do that first person, there ain't that many of them. And in that moment, I just felt really fortunate to be able to be the person that was standing behind that bag and giving him that signal to me. So I didn't plan on getting all emotional today. So as per usual, I will wear my heart on my sleeve on this show, and you can judge of that what you like. But I do think that if you're a youth baseball coach and you wrap your head around the idea that like the next time might be the last time, whether that's for the kids you coach or for your own child and the experience that they have in this game, I think that's a valuable thing to hold tight to, because the perspective that it informs and the way that it colors the behavior that you have and the emotions that you show and just the way that you feel about this thing. And again, because so much of that stuff gets reflected to the kids that we're coaching, it's a pretty important concept. So that's all I got. Thank you guys, as per usual. I appreciate you guys just tuning in to listen to me take a deep dive into my own psychosis and tell these stories about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to push the game. And I had somebody email me again that was just like, hey, how do we support the movement? And like the number one thing that I will tell you, because you've gotten this far deep into the show, is we're bringing back This Week in Pitch Counts. We are doing that because I think a light continues to need to be shown on overuse and systemic overuse in youth baseball. So because games are going to start up, if you see some bad stuff on the field, holler at me. You can either reply to one of the threads. Twitter is probably best. But if you want to hit my DMs, that's fine too, and I'll keep you anonymous. But we got to continue to just like make the point that this is a thing that needs to be solved, which means that I need you guys to let me know when you see stuff. I'll creep around and look for stuff on my own, but you guys are definitely going to see more Game Changer box scores at scale than I ever will. So when you see stuff that looks bad, send it to me, and I will find a way to make the point without embarrassing the athlete or even like attacking the org or the coach, that some of this stuff is just solved by better systems, and that's what we're trying to push forward with universal pitch counts, universal reporting. So this week in pitch counts is coming back, so send me those game changer box scores. You want to reflect back on one of an oldie or a goodie. I posted some of the screenshots from Joey Bats and the infamous 161 pitch CG for a 10-year-old on my Twitter just the other day. So if you want a good laugh, you can go check those out. That's all I got. Rest in peace to Eddie Guerrero. Shout out to anybody else watching the Rumble tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, Saturday. Anyways, drivelabaseball.com/training/youth. Use code podcast to get 25% off of a youth assessment, and that's valid in all 3 of our locations. Code podcast, drivelabaseball.com/training/youth. 25% discount on the youth assessment, specific for you, our podcast family. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to do something specific for you guys, but hopefully you appreciate it. Other than that, I think we're fini. My name is Devin. I am Down by Law. I will catch you next time. Thanks, bye.